There is a new king in town, and it is not Paul. Let's get into it. So for all the people that were watching DDO, you may not be aware, but there was actually 4 events that went down this weekend. You had the Konopiste Open, obviously the DDO, and then the Norwegian Disc Golf Championship and the Oulu, which I believe is a Finnish-only tournament. But the main thing I want to talk about today is the Konopiste Open. And that's because Niklas Antilla, who you definitely know because he's been in so many US events, totally crushed it. He won by 8 strokes, and you might say, yeah, I mean, he won by 8 strokes, but like the field wasn't even that deep. Well, I mean, yes, the field was not that deep. But Paul McBeth was there, and not only was he there, but he threw 10 strokes worse than Niklas. And with an average of 1063 rated, Niklas is throwing some phenomenal disc golf. I think it is fair to say that he is an elite force that is itching towards that GOAT status. You do have to definitely add the asterisk that he does perform a little bit worse in some events than maybe a Gannon or a Calvin. But besides them two, he is throwing so good. They could basically play against any other player in the field and most likely come on top. And a very shocking realization I had is looking at the matchup between Niklas and Paul. It was much closer than you might think. In the last year, Niklas was a major machine, with the exception of Worlds. He didn't do so well at Worlds. So looking at European Open, he got a 4th place finish, and Paul got a 2nd, which was arguably a lot better of a 2nd place than Niklas because it was like 14 strokes. But we don't really care about that. We're just looking at places. So Niklas was only 2 places behind Paul with a 4th place finish at European Open. Looking at Worlds, obviously Paul won. Niklas got 64th. So that's not so great in his favor. But then after that, basically every event, it is like hopscotch where one player wins one week, the other player wins the next. Niklas 8th at GMC, Paul 5th. Niklas 2nd place at USDGC, Paul 4th. Again, this was a great finish from Niklas. Probably his best finish ever. Open at Austin, he did finish 30th, whereas Paul finished 10th. And then Champions Cup, once again, he just shows up at the majors. Niklas got 2nd, Paul got 20th, actually tied at Jonesboro with 15th place. And then we come to the most recent head-to-head battle, Konopiste, where Niklas totally destroyed and Paul got 6th place. And this 6th place is a very bizarre 6th place because he was up against players with a much lower rating. And I know there is the European scale, which has a very different view on ratings. But with that said, it is still interesting to note that Paul got beat by a 994 and 991 rated player. These are just things that you do not really expect from the world champ. And in even more bizarre fashion, Paul threw a 1078 rated round in his 2nd round. Phenomenal disc golf, probably some of his best, and this is definitely looking like a trend of good things. But immediately following that same course, Paul comes back with a 988 rated round. And Niklas is just staying in his lane with the same score, 1062 rated. Now, obviously, every event is a little bit different. It favors certain shot shapes more than others. And especially if you're in a foreign country, that will definitely favor people that are from that country more so than you. But Niklas has kind of been crushing it in the US, and he's crushing it in Europe. So I think it is fair to say that he is definitely performing well above what we perceive him to be. And he is outperforming Paul about 50% of the time. Not every time, but he's performing so well at majors that I just think we have to really look at him as one of the most elite players on tour. Whereas last year, you definitely could not really say that. There was just like a couple events that he was like doing pretty well. We didn't really know if it was just like an anomaly or a trend. I think by now we can definitely say that Niklas has a trend of playing great disc golf. And assuming that he does well for the rest of the European part of his tour, and if he does get a top 5 finish at European Open, I think he has cemented himself as one of the greats for the 2023 season. And it is very odd because people really aren't talking about him nearly as much as they talk about other players that are playing decently well, but then they kind of fall apart in the final rounds. Niklas has just been very consistent. His putter is great. It is super clean and consistent, and when he is feeling it, he is really feeling it. I could make an entire compilation of all his Circle 2 putts because it is just so cool to watch, and he puts with so much confidence and that repeatable motion. You just know how much hard work he puts in, and he seems like an overall great player and a great dude. So while it may be apples to oranges with Niklas compared to a Calvin or a Gannon Burr, I do think he is one of the greatest players right now, and I think with all the potential he has, he really has the opportunity to show the world how good he is, and I cannot wait to see that because to me it seems like he's still kind of unknown, which is shocking to me. And even though Simon does have a win this year, I do think Niklas is kind of the best European player because his consistency has been proven week after week. But let me know what you guys think. What do you perceive of Niklas's success? And do you actually think it's comparable to the US? Because the two tours are just so different. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Wild Run signing out. Peace.
Yeah. We'll be right back.